Tonight, we're going to explore words that have been offering peace to anxious hearts for over 2,000 years. Words that are simple enough to understand in a moment, yet profound enough to transform how you meet each day. Before we begin, let yourself settle wherever you are. Feel the surface beneath you. Let your body find its comfort. You're exactly where you need to be right now. Take a slow, deep breath. And let's begin our journey together. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from worrying. Not the tiredness of physical work or even mental effort, but the deep fatigue of carrying tomorrow's troubles today, of lying awake at night, running through scenarios that haven't happened, of trying to control outcomes that are still forming, of attempting to solve problems that don't yet exist. Most people don't realize how much energy worry consumes. They think worry is just something that happens to them, like weather passing through. But worry is something we do. It's an activity, a habit, a way of relating to the future that we practice so often it feels like simply who we are. And here's what makes it particularly exhausting. Worry never actually solves anything. It doesn't prevent bad things from happening. It doesn't prepare you for difficulty. It just uses up today's peace, trying to manage tomorrow's uncertainty. Jesus taught something radical about this. In the Sermon on the Mount, he said words that have been translated many ways, but they all point to the same truth. Do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. These aren't just pretty words meant to make you feel better. They're an invitation to a completely different way of living. A way that doesn't require you to carry the weight of the future. A way that lets you meet each day with the strength that's actually available in that day. In a village known for its vineyards, there lived a man named Thomas, who managed one of the largest estates in the region. He was responsible for the grape harvest, for the workers, for ensuring everything ran smoothly, so the wine could be produced and sold. It was work that required planning, foresight, attention to detail. But Thomas had turned planning into something else entirely. He had turned it into worry. Every morning, he would wake before dawn, and before his feet even touched the floor, his mind was already racing. What if the weather turned bad before harvest? What if the workers didn't show up? What if the grapes ripened unevenly? What if the merchant didn't pay what he'd promised? What if? His wife would watch him at breakfast, seeing him stare at his food without eating, lost in thoughts about things that hadn't happened yet. You're not here, she would say gently. You're somewhere in the future, fighting battles that haven't begun. I'm just being responsible, he would reply. Someone has to think about these things. Someone has to prepare for what might go wrong. But the truth was, his worry wasn't making him more prepared. It was making him exhausted. By the time actual problems arose, problems that needed his clear thinking and steady hand, he was already depleted from worrying about problems that never materialized. One particularly difficult season, everything seemed to be going wrong at once. A late frost had damaged some of the vines. 2 of his best workers had left for better pay elsewhere. The merchant, who usually bought the bulk of their wine, had delayed his visit. Thomas was drowning in worry, lying awake most nights, his mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. One afternoon, an old priest who occasionally walked through the vineyards stopped to talk with him. he found Thomas standing in the middle of the vines, staring at them with a look of such anxiety that it bordered on despair. "The vines look healthy," the priest observed. "For now," Thomas said. "But what if the weather changes? What if we can't find enough workers for harvest? What if the merchant doesn't come? We could lose everything." The priest was quiet for a moment, just looking at the vines heavy with growing grapes. Then he said something that Thomas would remember for the rest of his life. "Look at these vines. They don't worry about harvest. They don't lie awake wondering if there will be enough rain or if the merchant will come. They just grow. They do what they're made to do today, and somehow, year after year, they produce grapes, not by worrying about it, just by being what they are, doing what they can do in this day." Thomas wanted to protest. He wanted to say that he wasn't a vine, that human life was more complicated, that someone had to think about the future. But something in the priest's words stopped him. Jesus said, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." The priest continued. He wasn't saying don't work. He worked. He was a carpenter. He understood labor and responsibility. He was saying don't add worry to your work. Don't carry tomorrow's burden today. The priest gestured to the vineyard around them. "You have work to do today. Real work. Pruning these vines, checking the soil, managing the workers who are here now. But you're so busy worrying about what might happen tomorrow that you're only half present for the work that's actually in front of you." After the priest left, Thomas stood there for a long time, feeling the truth of those words. He realized that his worry hadn't solved a single problem, not one. The frost had come whether he worried about it or not. The workers had left despite his anxiety about staffing. The merchant would come or not come regardless of how many nights Thomas spent awake thinking about it. But his worry had cost him something real. It had cost him his peace. It had cost him his presence with his family. It had cost him his ability to fully engage with the actual work of each day. He'd been so focused on potential future disasters that he'd been missing the real life happening around him. That evening, he did something different. When the familiar worry thoughts arose, what if this? What if that? He noticed them. And then he asked himself, what can I actually do about this today? Right now, in this moment, what action is available to me? Sometimes there was an action. He could check on the vines. He could send word to potential workers. He could write to the merchant. And when there was an action, he took it. But once he'd done what could be done today, he practiced letting the rest go. It wasn't easy. The worry thoughts were habits worn deep, like paths through a forest that his mind automatically followed. But each time he noticed himself worrying about tomorrow, he would bring himself back, not now. Tomorrow has not yet come. What is mine to do today? Over the following weeks, something began to shift in Thomas. He started to understand what Jesus meant about each day having enough trouble of its own. Because it was true. Each day did bring its challenges, but each day also brought the energy and clarity to meet those challenges. If he wasn't already exhausted from yesterday's worry and tomorrow's anxiety. He discovered something else too. When he stopped trying to control the future through worry, when he focused on what was actually in front of him, he made better decisions. He was more present with his workers. which meant he noticed things he'd been missing. He had more energy for his wife and children. He even enjoyed the work more, the physical labor of tending the vines, the satisfaction of a day's work completed. The harvest that year was actually one of the better ones, not because Thomas had worried less, but despite it, or perhaps because of it, because he'd been fully present to do what needed doing each day instead of being half absent, lost in worry about what might happen. In a neighboring village, there was a woman named Martha who ran a small bakery. She had built the business herself and was doing well enough to support her and her daughter. But Martha had developed a relationship with worry that was consuming her life. She worried about everything. Would there be enough customers today? Would the bread rise properly? Would her supplier deliver the flour on time? Would her daughter be safe walking to school? Would there be enough money to fix the roof before winter? Would she get sick and be unable to work? The worry had become so constant that she barely noticed it anymore. It was just the background hum of her mind, always there, like a pot always simmering on the stove. She thought this was normal. She thought this was what responsibility looked like. Her daughter, Anna, was 12 years old and unusually perceptive. She had started to notice how her mother was always tense, always distracted, always somewhere else, even when she was physically present. Anna would tell her about her day at school, and Martha would nod and make the right sounds. But Anna could tell she wasn't really listening. She was too busy worrying about tomorrow's flour delivery or next week's bills. One evening, Anna asked her mother a question that cut through everything. "Mama, when are you happy?" Martha looked up, startled. "I'm happy. I'm happy that the bakery is doing well, that you're healthy, that we have a roof over our heads. But when do you feel happy?" Anna persisted. "Like, in the moment. When do you stop worrying long enough to actually feel good about those things?" Martha opened her mouth to answer, then realized she couldn't. She was grateful for those things, yes, but feel happy about them. Actually experience joy in the present moment. She couldn't remember the last time she'd done that. There was always something else to worry about, something lurking just around the corner that might go wrong. That night, lying in bed, Martha found herself thinking about something she'd heard in church years ago. Jesus saying something about not worrying about tomorrow. She'd always dismissed it as impractical. Easy for Jesus to say. He didn't have a business to run, a child to raise, bills to pay. But Anna's question haunted her. When are you happy? She realized that she'd spent so much time worrying about keeping her daughter safe and provided for that she'd forgotten to actually be present with her, to enjoy her, to be happy with her. The next morning, Martha made a decision. She would try something different. Just for one day, she would practice what Jesus had said. She would try to be anxious for nothing, to meet only what was actually in front of her. When her mind jumped to, what if the flour delivery is late? She stopped herself. The flour will come or it won't. If it doesn't, I'll deal with it. Then right now, the dough is rising perfectly. Right now, Anna is telling me about her friend at school. Right now, this is what's real. It was harder than she expected. Her mind was so used to leaping forward, to planning, to worrying. Every few minutes, she'd catch herself spinning out into some future scenario, and each time, she'd bring herself back. Not now. Right now, what's actually happening? What was actually happening was often quite good. The morning light coming through the bakery window, the smell of fresh bread, a customer's genuine delight with a pastry, Anna laughing at something. Small moments that Martha had been missing because she was always mentally somewhere else. By the end of that first day, she was exhausted in a different way. Not the depleted exhaustion of worry, but the kind of tired that comes from being fully present. She'd had to work to keep bringing her attention back to the moment over and over. It was like exercising a muscle she'd never used before. But she'd also felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Brief moments of it, yes, but real peace. The peace of just being here, doing what needed to be done, not carrying tomorrow's burdens today. Anna noticed the change immediately. "Mama, you're different today. You're really here." Martha felt tears spring to her eyes. She pulled her daughter close. "I'm trying to be. I realized I've been so worried about taking care of you tomorrow that I've been missing taking care of you today, missing being with you today." It became a practice for Martha. Not something she did perfectly, but something she returned to again and again. When worry thoughts arose, and they still did, constantly she would ask herself, "Is this something I can do something about right now? If yes, do it. If no, let it go." This wasn't about being irresponsible. She still planned. She still prepared for things. She still saved money and maintained her equipment and made sure she had enough supplies. But she learned the difference between wise planning and anxious worry. Planning was thinking about the future from a place of calm presence. Worry was trying to control the future from a place of fear. She started to understand what Jesus meant when he said, "Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Each day did have its challenges, but each day also had its own grace, its own provision, its own unexpected help. When she stopped being so anxious about tomorrow, she was more able to see the help that was available today. One day, the thing she'd worried about for months actually happened. Her largest supplier raised their prices significantly, more than she could easily absorb. The old Martha would have panicked, would have spiraled into catastrophic thinking about losing the business, not being able to provide for Anna, ending up destitute. But this Martha did something different. She felt the fear. She didn't try to push it away, but she didn't let it run wild either. She sat with it, acknowledged it, and then asked, "What can I do about this today?" She talked to the supplier, negotiated what she could. She researched other suppliers. She looked at her pricing and her costs. She made some adjustments, and then, having done what she could do that day, she let it go. The solution didn't come immediately. It took weeks to work out. But it did work out, though not in the way she'd planned. A customer mentioned her situation to someone who knew of a smaller supplier with better prices. A connection she would never have found through worry, but that appeared when she was present enough to have real conversations with people instead of being lost in her anxious thoughts. "God provided," she told Anna one evening. "Not because I worried about it. In fact, the solution only came when I stopped worrying enough to be present with what was actually happening. The worry wouldn't have helped. It would have just made me more exhausted and less able to see the help when it came." In the same region, there was a young man named David who had just started his first real job as a teacher in the village school. He was passionate about teaching, loved working with the children, but he was consumed with anxiety about whether he was good enough. Every lesson he taught, he would agonize over afterwards. Had he explained it well enough? Had the children understood? What if he was failing them? What if the parents complained? What if he lost his job? What if he turned out to be terrible at the one thing he thought he was meant to do? The anxiety was making him a worse teacher, not a better one. He was so worried about making mistakes that he was afraid to try new things, so worried about what people thought that he couldn't be natural with the children, so worried about the future that he couldn't be fully present in each lesson. There was an older teacher at the school, a woman named Elizabeth, who had been teaching for 30 years. She watched David with a mixture of compassion and concern. She recognized in him a younger version of herself, before she'd learned some hard lessons about worry. One afternoon, she invited him to walk with her after school. They walked through the fields outside the village, where wildflowers were blooming in riotous color. "Do you know what Jesus said about flowers?" Elizabeth asked, gesturing to the field. David nodded. "Something about lilies, about how they don't work or worry, but they're beautiful anyway." Do you know what he was really saying? Elizabeth stopped walking and looked at him directly. He was saying that there's a wisdom in how creation works. These flowers don't worry about whether they're beautiful enough. They don't lie awake wondering if they're doing it right. They just do what they're made to do. They grow toward the light. They open their petals. They bloom. And in doing what they're made to do, without anxiety, they become glorious. She started walking again, and David walked beside her, listening. "You're so worried about being a good teacher that you're forgetting to actually teach. You're so anxious about the future, about whether you'll fail or succeed, that you're only half present with the children who are in front of you right now. And those children, they need you here, not lost in worry about tomorrow." David felt something crack open inside him. But what if I really am failing them? What if I'm not good enough? "What if you are?" Elizabeth countered gently. "What if, in this moment, you're exactly what those children need? Not perfect, not without mistakes, but present, caring, doing your best today, not tomorrow's best, not some imaginary perfect teacher's best, just your best today." She picked one of the wildflowers, a simple daisy. This flower isn't worried about being a rose. It's not anxious about whether it's beautiful enough. It's just being fully what it is. And look at it. It's perfect exactly as it is. They walked in silence for a while. Then Elizabeth said, "Jesus also talked about birds. He said, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" "I always thought that was about not working," David said. "But birds work hard. I watch them. They're constantly looking for food, building nests, caring for their young." "Exactly," Elizabeth said. "They work, but they don't worry. They do what's theirs to do each day. They look for food today. They build the nest now. They feed the chicks that are here. But they don't lie awake wondering if there will be enough worms tomorrow. They don't worry about what winter might bring. They meet each day as it comes." She paused. "And somehow, generation after generation, they're provided for. Not because they worried about it, but because they did what was theirs to do and trusted that tomorrow would have what it needed when it came." David began to practice what Elizabeth had shown him. When he prepared for a lesson, he would notice when his mind started spinning out into worry. What if this doesn't work? What if the children don't understand? What if I look foolish? And he would stop himself. Right now, I'm preparing this lesson. That's all. I'm doing what's mine to do today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. When he was actually teaching, he practiced being fully present. When his mind would leap forward to the next lesson or worry about whether he'd explained something well enough, he would bring himself back. Right now, I'm with these children. This is what's real. This is what matters. This is what we do. We've been provided for before. We've made it through difficulties. We've seen help come from unexpected places. But when a new challenge arises, we forget. We immediately jump to worry, as if we've never been cared for before. As if we're on our own. As if everything depends on our anxious spinning. So what does this look like practically? How do you actually live without worrying about tomorrow, when you have real responsibilities, real concerns, real challenges? It starts with noticing. Notice when your mind jumps to the future. Notice when you start spinning out into what-if scenarios. Notice when you're carrying tomorrow's burdens today. Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't make it wrong. Just see it clearly. Then ask, what can I do about this right now? Is there an action available to me in this moment? If yes, take the action. Make the phone call. Send the email. Have the conversation. Do the research. Take the concrete step that's available today. And then, having done what you can do, practice letting the rest go. If there's no action available, if the thing you're worried about is truly tomorrow's concern or completely out of your control, practice coming back to now. What's actually happening right now? In this moment, are you okay? In this moment, what's real? Often, in the present moment, things are actually okay. Not perfect, not without challenges, but okay. The catastrophe you're worrying about hasn't happened. The worst case scenario is a story in your mind, not a reality in your life. Right now, you're breathing, you're alive, you're here. This isn't about positive thinking or denying real problems. It's about distinguishing between what's actually happening and what you're afraid might happen. Between the present moment and your worried thoughts about the future. Martha learned to do this in her bakery. When worry thoughts arose, and they still did, she would bring herself back to what was real. Right now, I'm kneading dough. Right now, my hands are moving. Right now, this is what's happening. Not tomorrow, not what might happen. What is happening right now? David learned it in his classroom. When his mind would spin out into, what if I'm failing these children? He would bring himself back. Right now, I'm teaching this lesson. Right now, Sarah is asking a question. Right now, this is what's real. Thomas learned it in the vineyard. When worry about the harvest would arise, he would look at the vines in front of him. Right now, these vines are growing. Right now, the grapes are ripening. Right now, this is what I can work with. This practice of returning to the present moment isn't a one-time thing. It's something you do over and over, hundreds of times a day. At first, your mind is trained to worry. It's got pathways worn deep from years of anxious thinking. It will leap to the future automatically. But each time you notice it and bring yourself back, you're creating a new pathway. You're training a new habit. You're learning a new way of being with life. Over time, something begins to shift. The worry thoughts still arise, they probably always will, but they don't have the same power. You start to see them as just thoughts, not truth, as habits of mind, not reality, as old patterns, not who you are. And in the space that opens up when you're not lost in worry, something else becomes available. Presence, peace, the ability to actually engage with your life as it's unfolding, rather than being half absent, lost in anxious thoughts about what might happen. You start to notice things you were missing. The way sunlight falls through a window, the sound of someone's laughter, the simple pleasure of work well done, the gift of this moment, exactly as it is. All of this was always here, but you couldn't see it because you were too busy worrying about tomorrow. This is what Jesus was inviting people into. Not a life without challenges, not a life without real concerns or difficulties, but a life lived in the present moment, meeting each day as it comes, trusting that what's needed will be provided when it's needed. Thomas's vineyard still faced challenges. There were still difficult seasons, unpredictable weather, uncertain markets, but he met those challenges differently. When they were actually happening, he dealt with them with clear thinking and steady action. And when they weren't happening, he let them go. Martha's bakery still had ups and downs. There were still supply issues, financial pressures, difficult days. But she was present for her daughter. She was present for her customers. She was present for her life. And somehow, perhaps because she was present, things worked out. Not perfectly, not without effort, but they worked out. David's teaching still had hard moments. There were still lessons that didn't go well, students he struggled to reach, days when he wondered if he was making any difference. But he was there with his students, really there, and they felt it and responded to it. None of them became perfect at not worrying. That wasn't the point. The point was learning to recognize worry when it arose and having a practice for meeting it, a way of returning to the present moment, a way of doing what was theirs to do today and trusting tomorrow to take care of itself. This is the invitation that's available to you right now. Not to become someone who never worries. That's not realistic. But to develop a different relationship with worry, to see it clearly when it arises, to question whether it's helping or just exhausting you, to practice coming back to the present moment again and again. Jesus said these words 2,000 years ago, but they're as relevant today as they were then, maybe more so. We live in a world that feeds worry, that bombards us with reasons to be anxious, that profits from our fear about the future. But you don't have to live that way. You can choose differently, not once and forever, but in each moment, in each breath, in each arising of worry. You can notice it and come back to now, back to what's real, back to what's actually in front of you. Right now, what's actually happening. Feel the surface beneath you. Notice your breath moving. Observe the space around you. This is real. This is what's actually here. Not the worried thoughts about tomorrow. Not the anxious spinning about what might happen. This, right here, right now. And in this moment, are you okay? Not is everything perfect. Not is your life exactly as you wish it were. But right now, in this actual moment, are you fundamentally okay? Most of the time, when we're honest, the answer is yes. In the present moment, things are usually manageable. The disaster is in our thoughts about the future. not in the reality of now. There's a story in the scriptures about a widow who came to the prophet Elisha in desperate anxiety. Her husband had died, leaving her with debts she couldn't pay. The creditors were coming to take her 2 sons as slaves. She was drowning in worry about what would happen, how she would survive, how she could protect her children. Elisha asked her a simple question. "What do you have in your house?" She almost dismissed the question. What did she have? Nothing. That was the problem. She had nothing to pay the debt, nothing to save her sons, nothing to change her situation. But Elisha pressed her. "What do you have? Right now, what's actually in your house?" "Nothing," she said. "Only a jar of oil." "Only a jar of oil," Elisha repeated. Then he told her to do something that must have seemed strange. "Go borrow empty jars from your neighbors, as many as you can. Then go inside, close the door, and pour the oil you have into the empty jars." She could have argued, could have said it was impossible, that one small jar of oil couldn't fill multiple vessels, that this wouldn't solve anything. But instead, she did what was hers to do that day. She borrowed jars. She went inside. She poured. And the oil kept flowing. One jar filled, then another, then another. The oil didn't stop until every vessel was full. She had enough to pay her debts and live on what remained. The miracle wasn't that she suddenly had everything she needed for the rest of her life. It was that what she had today was sufficient for today. And when she met today with action rather than worry, provision came. She couldn't see how it would work out when she was consumed with anxiety about the future. But when she focused on what she could do with what she had in the present moment, a way opened. This is how it works. Not that you'll never face difficulty, not that everything will magically resolve, but that when you're present to what's actually here, when you work with what you actually have instead of being paralyzed by what you don't have, something shifts. Provision comes. Help arrives. A way opens. But you can't see it from the place of worry. Worry blinds you to what's available. Anxiety about tomorrow makes you miss the oil jar that's right here today. Jesus taught his followers to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." Not this year's bread, not this decade's bread, today's bread, this day's provision. There's deep wisdom in that. When the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, God provided manna each morning, enough for that day. When some people try to hoard it, try to gather extra for tomorrow out of anxiety about whether there would be enough, it spoiled. It rotted. The provision was for today. Tomorrow would have its own manna. But you couldn't access tomorrow's provision today. You had to trust that when tomorrow came, it would bring what it needed. This is still true. You can't live tomorrow's day today. You can't solve tomorrow's problems with today's energy. You can't access tomorrow's grace right now. It's not here yet. But today's grace is here. Today's provision is available. Today's strength is sufficient for today's challenges, not for tomorrow's. Not for next week's, but for today's. When you try to carry tomorrow's burdens with today's strength, you collapse under the weight. It's too much. It was never meant to be carried all at once. But when you carry only today's actual burden, it's bearable. Maybe not easy, maybe not comfortable, but bearable. In the village where Thomas tended his vineyard, there lived a young mother named Rachel. She had a 3-year-old daughter, Hannah, who was the light of her life. But Rachel was consumed with worry about everything that might happen to her child. What if Hannah got sick? What if she was hurt playing? What if something terrible happened when Rachel wasn't watching? What if the love Rachel felt for her daughter was real and deep, but somewhere along the way, that love had gotten tangled up with fear. She started to believe that worrying was how you showed you cared, that anxiety was the price of being a good mother. So she was vigilant to the point of exhaustion. She hovered over Hannah constantly. She imagined every possible danger and tried to prevent them all. She lay awake at night running through scenarios of things that might go wrong. And Hannah, sensitive child that she was, had started to absorb her mother's anxiety. She became timid, afraid to explore. Worried about making mistakes, she was learning that the world was a dangerous place and that fear was the appropriate response to life. One afternoon, Rachel took Hannah to the village well, where other mothers gathered with their children. The children were playing together, laughing and running. But Hannah stayed close to her mother, watching the others with wide, uncertain eyes. An older woman named Judith sat down beside Rachel. She'd raised 6 children of her own and had known Rachel since she was Hannah's age. "She's afraid," Judith observed gently, watching Hannah. "The world is dangerous," Rachel said defensively. "I'm just trying to keep her safe." "Safe from what?" Judith asked. "From living." Rachel felt a flash of anger. But before she could respond, Judith continued, her voice soft with compassion. "When my first child was born, I was like you. Every moment was filled with fear about what might happen. I imagined every possible danger. I tried to protect him from everything. And you know what happened? He became fearful too. He absorbed my anxiety like water soaking into earth." She paused, watching the children play. "One day, my mother-in-law said something to me. She said, 'You can't protect him from life. You can only teach him how to meet it.' And I realized she was right. My worry wasn't keeping him safe. It was teaching him to be afraid." Rachel felt tears spring to her eyes because she recognized the truth of it. But how do you not worry? How do you stop being afraid when you love someone so much? "You don't stop feeling fear," Judith said, "but you don't let the fear drive you. When fear arises, you ask, 'Is there something I can do about this right now?' If yes, you do it. If no, you trust. You trust that this day will have what it needs. You trust that you'll meet whatever comes when it actually comes, not in your worried imagination of it." She gestured to the playing children. "Look at them. They fall down and get back up. They make mistakes and learn from them. They explore and discover they're not afraid because they're present with what's actually happening, not with what might happen." That's what Jesus was pointing to when he talked about becoming like children. Over the following weeks, Rachel began to notice her patterns of worry, how her mind constantly leaped to the future, to all the terrible things that might happen, and she started to practice what Judith had shown her. When the feared thoughts arose, she would ask, "Is Hannah in danger right now? Is there something I need to do in this actual moment?" Usually, the answer was no. Hannah was fine. She was playing safely. She was learning and exploring. The danger was in Rachel's worried imagination, not in the present reality. Slowly, Rachel began to give Hannah more space, to let her explore a little more, risk a little more, live a little more. And Hannah began to bloom. Her natural curiosity emerged. Her joy became less constrained. She was learning that the world was a place to engage with, not just a source of danger to fear. One day, Hannah fell while running and scraped her knee badly. Rachel's first instinct was to panic, to berate herself for not preventing it, to spiral into all the what-ifs about what could have happened. But she stopped herself. She took a breath. Right now, Hannah needs me to be calm and present. Right now, she needs me to clean this scrape and comfort her. That's all. Not worry about what might have happened. Just meet what did happen. She cleaned Hannah's knee, held her while she cried, and then watched as her daughter, resilient as children are, ran off to play again a few minutes later. "Mama didn't panic," Hannah said to another child, with something like pride in her voice. And Rachel realized that this was a gift she could give her daughter. Not a life without falls or scrapes or difficulties, but the modeling of how to meet those things with presence rather than panic, with response rather than worry. What Rachel discovered, what Thomas and Martha and David discovered, what Jesus was teaching 2,000 years ago, is that there's a profound freedom in living one day at a time, in meeting only what's actually here, in trusting that tomorrow, when it comes, will bring its own provision. This doesn't mean you don't plan. Rachel still taught Hannah to be careful. Thomas still prepared his vineyard for the seasons. Martha still ordered supplies in advance. David still planned his lessons. But there's a difference between wise planning and anxious worry. Planning says, these are the steps I can take today to prepare for tomorrow. Worry says, I need to control tomorrow by thinking about it constantly today. Planning is an action. Worry is a spinning of the mind that creates the illusion of doing something, while actually just depleting your energy and stealing your peace. You can plan for tomorrow. You can prepare. You can take wise steps. But then you have to let go. You have to trust that you've done what you can do, and tomorrow will bring what it needs when it actually arrives. Jesus said, "Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life?" The answer is no. Worry doesn't extend your life. It doesn't prevent bad things from happening. It doesn't solve problems before they arise. It just makes today harder than it needs to be. But the alternative isn't carelessness or irresponsibility. The alternative is presence, doing what's yours to do in this day, taking the actions that are available to you now, and then resting in the trust that tomorrow will be met when it comes. Right now, as you're hearing these words, you might notice worry thoughts in the background of your mind, things you're concerned about, situations you're trying to control, outcomes you're anxious about. Just notice them. Don't make them wrong. Don't judge yourself for worrying. Just see the thoughts clearly. Then ask, what can I do about this right now? In this actual moment, is there an action available to me? If yes, and if it's appropriate to take that action now, do it. But if there's nothing to do right now, if the thing you're worried about is tomorrow's concern, practice letting it go. Just for now, just for this moment. Come back to your breath. Feel the surface beneath you. Notice the sounds around you. This is what's real, this moment. Not the worried thoughts about what might happen. This, right here, right now. And in this moment, notice, are you okay? Not is everything perfect. Not is your life without challenges. But right now, in this actual moment, are you fundamentally all right? Most likely you are. The catastrophe is in your thoughts, not in your present reality. And this is almost always true. The present moment is usually manageable. It's when we add tomorrow's burdens to today's reality that things become overwhelming. Jesus understood this. That's why he taught so clearly and consistently about staying present, about meeting each day as it comes, about trusting that provision comes when it's needed, not before. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. Each day will bring its challenges, but each day will also bring its grace, its strength, its provision, its unexpected helps. You just have to be present enough to receive them. There's a kind of peace that becomes available when you stop trying to control the future through worry. It's not the peace of having everything figured out. It's not the peace of knowing everything will work out perfectly. It's the peace of being present with what is, of doing what's yours to do today, of trusting that tomorrow will bring what it needs. The Apostle Paul, who faced imprisonment, shipwreck, persecution, and constant uncertainty, wrote about this peace. He called it the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. It's a peace that doesn't make sense from the outside. How can you be peaceful when circumstances are difficult? How can you be at ease when the future is uncertain? But this peace isn't based on circumstances. It's based on presence, on being here, now, meeting what's actually in front of you, on trusting that you're held, cared for, not alone. Thomas found this peace in his vineyard, not because every harvest was perfect, not because difficulties never came, but because he learned to be present with what was, rather than lost in worry about what might be. Martha found it in her bakery, not because business challenges disappeared, but because she learned to meet each day as it came, with its own sufficient grace. David found it in his classroom, not because teaching became easy, or he never doubted himself, but because he learned to be present with his students, meeting each lesson as it unfolded. Rachel found it as a mother, not because she stopped feeling fear for her daughter, but because she learned to distinguish between real danger requiring action and worried thoughts requiring release. This peace is available to you, not as something you have to achieve or earn, but as something you discover when you stop disturbing it with worry, when you come back to the present moment again and again, when you do what's yours to do today and trust tomorrow to take care of itself. As you continue listening, you might let yourself settle even more deeply. Let your body release any tension it's holding. Let your breath find its natural rhythm. You don't have to do anything right now except be here. All the worried thoughts about tomorrow, they'll still be there later if you need them. But right now, just for these moments, you can let them go. You can rest in this present moment. You can trust that this moment is enough, that you are enough, that what you need will be here when you need it. Jesus' words weren't meant to add another burden, another thing to worry about whether you're worrying too much. They were meant to point you toward freedom, the freedom of living one day at a time, of being present for your life as is actually unfolding, not lost in anxious thoughts about how it might unfold. This is the invitation, not to never feel worry again, but to develop a different relationship with it, to see it when it arises, to question whether it's helping, to practice coming back to now, again and again and again. Each time you notice worry and come back to the present moment, You're accepting the invitation. You're living into the teaching. You're discovering that Jesus wasn't just giving nice-sounding advice. He was pointing to a real way of being that's available to you right now. Tomorrow will come. It always does. And when it comes, it will be today. And in that today, you'll have what you need to meet it. Not because everything will be easy, not because difficulty never comes, but because each day brings its own sufficient grace. You don't need tomorrow's grace today. You can't access it anyway. But today's grace is here. Today's strength is available. Today's provision is sufficient for today's needs. So let tomorrow take care of itself. It will, whether you worry about it or not. But today needs you present. Your life, your actual life, is happening now, not in your worried thoughts about the future. Now, in this moment, in this breath, and this moment, this breath, this day is enough. Not perfect, not without challenges, but enough, sufficient, complete in itself. This is the teaching. This is the invitation. This is the peace that Jesus offered 2,000 years ago, and that's still available right now. Do not be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And sufficient for this day is its own grace, its own provision, its own quiet peace that comes from being present, being here, being alive to what actually is, rather than lost in worry about what might be. Let yourself rest in that. Let yourself trust that. Let yourself be here now, held by a care that's bigger than your worry, sustained by a grace that comes new each morning, sufficient for each day. You don't have to carry tomorrow today. You were never meant to. Just be here. Just do what's yours to do now. Just trust that when tomorrow comes, you'll meet it, not alone, not without help, not without the sufficient grace that will be there when you need it. This is the gift of this day, the gift of this moment, the gift of being present for your life, right here, right now. Rest in that gift. You're exactly where you need to be. And in this moment, that is enough.